Thank you for joining me for the next session of Dr. Plotzker's Mind. I did something that I thought I would never do again. I signed on to Twitter. Apparently, it had been not quite a year since I was last there. It hasn't changed. What I see are mostly a few famous people that I've opted to follow who keep writing one or two sentences of their own. And of course, either their echo chamber or their antagonists respond to that sentence or two. More typically, they retweet something else. And of course, what they retweet is the outrageous. Deport all Mexicans, make sure the new House of Representatives does not deviate from divine justice, celebrate Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King days together. Things that most people of reasonable intellect and character would figure out on their own, that are kind of beneath the dignity of what most of us stand for. But it gets responses, sometimes a lot of responses. Responses are the metric. Kedusha or sanctity, that's not the metric. Responses are the metric. It's basically a great wasteland to be left to the journalists who like being there. I guess if I were a journalist and I had to see the full spectrum of what's out there, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly, weighted a little bit more toward the ugly. If I were a journalist, I would kind of want to know what an audience would respond to, since my livelihood and my personal prominence would depend on that. So journalists kind of like being there. And a lot of the comments I get or come onto my screen, I don't really get them, come that way. Again, very little that is original, stuff that is either put out there because it's outrageous, with the journalists regretting that they didn't put it out there first. Definitely not something to be following. So that expands to other social media that I do or don't follow. I let my subscription to Barry Weiss's Substack, once called Common Sense, then changed to Free Press. I let that lapse without renewal this week. She's not a bad writer, and she has some very astute guest columnists, but it's an echo chamber. Basically, what they do is take progressives or anything that would fall into the category of progressive thought, make it into a piñata and let the readers take their sticks and crash it without releasing any of the candy. Now, I am about the most, not really hostile, but skeptical of the progressive wing of my own party. I think they would do a lot of harm if they implemented what they want to do. uh, but I don't have to bash them every day. I kind of got the hang of what they are presenting. Um, there's also, as you read some of the commentary, there's this element of what I would called Genevas Das, or which is Hebrew literally for stealing one's thoughts, but really means misrepresentation or distortion. There's a certain amount of that there. And I paid money for this. I didn't pay any money for Twitter or Facebook. This wasn't worth the $50 that I paid for it. Now, the Atlantic and the Forward, I paid money for those too. Those continue. Those are worth what I paid for them. And then we have Reddit. I kind of like Reddit. I'm only on 2 subsections, but I contribute to the comments that I'm an older, wiser, relatively secular but knowledgeable person on the Judaism site. Um, and you have a lot of people with less experience posting, hoping that somebody with more experience will uh, direct them. So there's a certain satisfaction in doing that. And then there's Facebook. Apparently, I've been a member going on 14 years. They haven't given me my 14-year pin yet, but I joined in 2009, right after I read a summary of the growing Facebook in the New York Times while visiting my son, who was working in New York at the time. And it was great reconnecting with my high school classmates, seeing what they're up to. That's long since disappeared. That now it's just a bunch of mostly unsolicited ads with just enough people I'm familiar with to keep me from signing off forever. But that's social media. I've done an okay job at um, rationing it. Could do better, but I've done okay. Um, Twitter is a minor amusement. I don't know if I will totally abandon it. It's amusing for the 3 minutes that I stay on it, but I think whenever I go on it, I have to do it with a timer. Um, and then Facebook a couple of days scan, and Reddit allows me to think a little bit and to be a contributor to somebody else. There's a certain value to that. Thanks so much for joining me for this session of Dr. Plotzker's Mind. I look forward to having you join me in a future installment.